Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video with this my friends. I'm gonna be testing the Radeon RX 6900 XT in Horizon Forbidden West. This one is the MSI Gaming Z version of the card. We are running it with the latest AMD drivers as usual, and I'm not manually overclocking it. It comes overclocked out of the box, and you can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups GPU Z. We got 16GB of GDDR6 memory, resizable bar is also enabled here, and over on the left, preparing it with a Ryzen 9 7950 X3D with half of its cores disabled, which makes it the same as a Ryzen 7 7800 X3D basically. And over on the memory tab, we're using 32GB of DDR5 6000MHz RAM in dual channel. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright guys, here we are in Horizon Forbidden West, and I'm gonna go to the Burning Shores area in just a little bit, which should be a little bit more intensive, but I want to show you a new setting that I added here to the on-screen displays, the VRAM utilization. That's what the U stands for right there, and up until now I've been utilizing the VRAM allocation, which, well, it's pretty close to VRAM usage actually, but it's actually only the allocated VRAM. It's not what the game is actually utilizing. This down here is what the game is using, okay, and you can see it's very close to 8GB. Sometimes it will go over 8GB, and that's why 8GB cards are struggling a lot in this title. Anyway, moving on, I'm playing at 1080p resolution first over here using TAA, and the maximum settings over here, aside from motion blur, vignette, and chromatic aberration, because, you know, they're ugly. Also, something that I noticed here with the 6900 XT is that the RAM utilization is a little bit higher for some weird reason, guys. Like, with other cards like the RTX 4070 Super, I was seeing 12GB, even under 12GB of RAM utilization in this same area. I tested that card over here, and this one is using 13GB of RAM. I don't know why. Obviously, this is not really running out of VRAM and swapping things into RAM. With the 6700 XT, I also saw that card using like 12GB of RAM, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe something is running on my PC, but I restarted multiple times and nothing seems to be on the background processes or anything, so I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to the more intensive Burning Shores DLC, and this is where I'm gonna spend most of my time in. As you can see, this area utilizes quite a bit more VRAM than the previous area where I tested, so those of you with 8GB cards that are seeing lower GPU VRAM utilizations than me, well, it all depends on the area where you test it. You know, some areas will use a ton of VRAM, other areas won't use a ton of VRAM. It's just, yeah, it's how it works. Anyway, I'm gonna start counting our FPS, our 6900 XT. Should I put a nice between the 69 and the 00 there on the on-screen display? No, it would just wreck everything. The background rectangle, the transparent dark rectangle, would just get misaligned and look ugly. Anyways, moving on, over here, this is actually one of the most intensive areas that I've come across so far in this entire game. Well, at least the parts that I played, which were like 4 major areas in the game. And as you can see, it drops down into the 90s, lower 90s. Not a problem though, it's a smooth experience, aside from the little stutters here and there that happen in this title with AMD GPUs. I've also seen the same behavior with the 6700 XT. NVIDIA cards, at least the ones that I've tried so far, if they don't run out of VRAM, they're actually really smooth. But this is just something weird that I noticed with AMD. But I guess if you aren't prone to noticing stuttering issues, I think it's gonna be okay, guys. Like, they're not big enough stutters to lower our 1% lows even to like very low values, for example, like Fortnite, you know, and other games that released last year and this year definitely do stutter a heck of a lot more than this one. Also, guys, look at the VRAM allocation and VRAM utilization values right there. Something new for us to take a look again. They're like a gigabyte apart, and apparently at 1080p resolution with the maximum settings, very high textures as well, which are the maximum obviously. It does utilize around 10GB of of actual VRAM, and it allocates 1 gigabyte more. So it's not really a huge discrepancy like a lot of people were saying it was. I saw a lot of people saying like, the game only utilized like 7.5 gigabytes at 4K max settings. Maybe it's true in some areas again, but in this one, which is very intensive for VRAM apparently, that's not really the case. It will definitely utilize like 11-12 gigabytes of VRAM at 4K. So yeah, that said, I think that's enough of 1080p resolution. It's gonna run perfectly if you are at this res, of course, to be expected. All right, let's go up to 1440p resolution. I will restart just to reset the RAM and VRAM utilization values, but this is very weird, like 15 gigabytes of RAM utilization. Maybe they're back with the memory leak issue from this game. I thought that was fixed, but yeah, apparently it isn't. It will just keep on utilizing more and more RAM as you progress. But hey, that's not a problem for us because we have 32 gigabytes of it, and 16 gigabytes of VRAM on this card are also pretty nice. Wow, look at this. Super beautiful game, but let's restart it and try again at 1440p. And we're back here. The RAM is back to 12-ish gigabytes of usage. VRAM is still at 10 gigabytes now, 10 and a half. Blah. Can't speak now. But let's go. Keep on going right here. Drop down there. 80s, 90s. That's extremely smooth, guys. The 6900 XT still definitely has what it takes to play this game. And this is an intensive game as well. Very beautiful, but still intensive at maximum settings. At 60 plus FPS all of the time. At 1440p resolution at the same time. And compare this to like Starfield, for example, or Slowfield, as I like to call it, right? This looks, not even joking, like 5 times better at the very least, if not more than that, right? I mean, if our baseline is like CS 1.6, this looks 1,000 times better than Starfield. And it is performing way better at the same time, right? This is a very, very well optimized title. Let's go in this direction, and I'm gonna venture out over there into the wilderness for a little bit. I've done that in other videos as well. I know what's going on over there. We're gonna fight some big robots, basically. All right, continue going on. So it's not really gonna be a super high refresh rate experience like it was at 1080p with like 120 FPS on average. That will definitely feel smoother, but this looks so much better, especially if you have a 1440p monitor. I mean, yeah, it's totally worth it, in my opinion, to play this particular title at 1440p over 1080p with a 6900 XT. Heck, it's totally worth it to upgrade your monitor to 1440p if you haven't already, and if you have a GPU like this one, or even a 6800 XT, RTX 3080 and stuff. Those GPUs are very good, you know? Although, newer titles, Dragon's Dogma, some newer titles won't really run all that well, but hey, it's just because of lack of optimization, basically. Also, 69 FPS, 1% lows. I kind of want to stop it right there, but we need to keep going, of course. How perfect is that? 69 1% lows, 6900 XT. If only it consumed 69 watts as well, guys. That would be perfect. But no, it doesn't. Anyways, around here, VRAM utilization is still kind of the same. 10.5 gigabytes around this big forest area. Lots of vegetation, lots of textures as well. Beautiful stuff. Big robots. There we go. Come on. I'm gonna try to fight these guys again. It's gonna take a while for us to fight them and kill them, actually. But yeah, it's part of the benchmark. Let's go. Oh boy, explosions, smoke effects, everything right here. Looking great. Really, really great. Max settings again. No need to use DRS or FSR here to increase your FPS. It's just gonna work very, very well with 6900 XT. And same goes for a 6800 XT again, because that GPU is only like 10% slower than this. Unfortunately, I don't have the 6800 XT. That's a very, very good GPU. But yeah, I can't really afford all of the AMD GPUs, guys. And AMD doesn't really send me stuff like Nvidia does. So yeah, I've tried contacting them like 100 times at this point. Never got an answer. So I guess it's safe to say I'm never gonna get AMD GPUs, or many of them. That's why I'm not testing 7000 series as well. Anyways, I think we've seen enough here. At 1440p. The RAM is actually at 13.5 gigabytes almost, which is weird. At 1080p it was creeping up more and more and more as we played, and now it actually stabilized at 13.5. I don't know. This game is very weird when it comes to VRAM and RAM usages indeed. Anyway, this is very, very good performance once again. Let's move up to 4K resolution. Okay, I just restarted the game. It's at 4K using TAA and the same maximum settings, aside from a couple of them, which I don't like again. And here we have it, guys. VRAM allocation is now up to 12 gigabytes, but that VRAM usage is at around 11 gigabytes, so not a problem still. Well, it won't really be a problem, even if the VRAM goes up to like 13, 14 gigabytes, because we got 16 in this GPU, which is very, very good. But yeah, it's interesting to take a look at that, because now I believe 12 gigabyte GPUs from AMD would probably start stuttering a little bit more than usual, because they would start swapping some things from VRAM, even though it's allocated VRAM, into the RAM, because I think that's what this game does. I've seen it time and time again with 8 gigabyte GPUs from NVIDIA, for example. It just works a little bit differently from other titles out there in terms of VRAM and RAM allocation and usages and so on, which is very weird, I know, but it is what it is. Anyway, moving on, around here we're getting like 50s, not a problem. Around here VRAM usage went down a little bit and allocation did as well. The RAM is still at 13-ish gigabytes, same as 1440p. Maybe something funky was going on at the 1080p resolution, but still, performance was very good, so who cares? Let's drop down, come on, there we go. And finally, guys, at 4K resolution, we're seeing the full power utilization of this GPU. It's a 300-watt graphics card, and it is hitting 300, 305 watts most of the time. And at the lower resolutions, it wasn't as utilized in terms of power usage, but that's completely normal, really. Yeah, those little frame time spikes are a little bit annoying sometimes. Again, if you're not paying close attention to that stuff, you can play the game all day long like this, but I am very prone to noticing these things, probably because I test them for a living, right? And yeah, I can definitely tell that the game is a little bit inconsistent, more inconsistent than with NVIDIA GPUs. So please, AMD, fix that if it's a driver issue or something, I don't know, but again, same thing happened with 6700 XT. Now, sometimes it can get up to like 60 FPS, and I believe in other areas that are less intensive, you can definitely get 60 FPS. For example, the starting mission for half an hour or so, it's usually less intensive than this. And yeah, you might think, yeah, it will get 60 plus FPS all of the time. My 6900 XT is much faster than your 6900 XT, but when you get to the burning shores right here, things will become very intensive. So you will probably need to utilize some FSR to run at 60 plus all of the time. The problem is, FSR quality, well, even at 4K resolution, it's not the prettiest thing, really. Like, I can notice that it got quite a bit more pixelated. Actually, yeah, definitely. I'm not seeing as much pixelation right here in this area because there's no grass, but once there's moving grass on screen, everything just becomes really, really pixelated, you know? Right now it's only the hair that has a bit of pixelation there. Things that you can ignore at 4K resolution, for sure. I wouldn't really mind playing like this if it means getting 60 plus FPS all of the time, you know? Like, I do like my smoothness, and I think this is definitely a worthy trade-off. But there is something better in this game that you should utilize instead of FSR2, and that is DRS, Dynamic Resolution Scale, which works very well in this game. And since we were only dropping to like the low 50s at the minimum here at 4K resolution with this GPU, enabling DRS is definitely my go-to option for this, because it won't really lower the resolution scale that much, especially not to the same values as FSR2 does over here, because now we're getting like 70 plus FPS most of the time, and it's running at 67% resolution compared to 4K. Yeah, sometimes goes down into like the 60s, but DRS will just lower the resolution scale to the point where it can get and stay at 60 frames per second, ending up looking quite a bit better. Obviously, if I just stop the camera like this, everything kind of looks like native resolution, even with FSR2 on quality, but it's just that when you start moving, a lot of noise happens in the image, which is unfortunate. I hope AMD also fixes their upscaler. Anyway, let's go ahead and try that dynamic resolution scale. I'm gonna set it to 60 FPS because that's the target FPS. Okay, I can still tell that this is a low resolution. Actually, it's a little bit worse than it was before. Oh, I know why. It's because we're not using any anti-aliasing. Just set this to TAA, and now, yeah, it's not as noticeable that it is running at low resolution. So now we got really good visuals, really good FPS. It shouldn't really drop from 60 FPS, and if it does, it's only to like 59, so who cares really? And it kind of looks like 4K resolution. It looks better than some other games do at 4K native resolution, because other games have some very bad implementations of TAA. They look super soft, and this is actually sharp, even though it's running a lower resolution than 4K with TAA on top. The TAA in this game actually works really, really well. So yeah, this is it. It works at 60 plus FPS if you want it to, with the help of DRS or with FSR. You know, you choose whatever you want. I think I would play like this. On my huge 42-inch monitor, I can still tell that some things are a little bit like more aliased, you know, than they would be at native resolution, but it's not to the point where it bothers me, and it certainly looks a little bit less noisy than FSR2 does, so I would go with this. Although those little stutters, again, they just annoy the crap out of me. I'm sorry to keep mentioning that, but yeah, it is what it is. I gotta keep mentioning those things so maybe companies see that. Well, actually, AMD is probably never gonna see me for some reason. Anyway, moving on. This is it for this video. Thanks very much for watching it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be back with another one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.